Today, we're breaking down the David Montgomery situation with actual cap numbers the media won't touch. Then we're launching our brand new segment, the Gray Mains Hall of the Underrated, with a legend who deserves far more recognition. Let's get into it. Forward down the field.
Jameer down to the 10. Jameer to the 5. Jameer to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions.
And off Berry. Skirts to the left side. Breaks a tackle. And he will take it in. Touchdown.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions. That's what I'm talking about. It is caught. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Oh, baby, what a play that time. Aiden Hutchinson read that and blew it up. Big time stand by that defense.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Lions Gray Mains. My name is Chris Stone. I'm at castahead.net, and the other gentleman on your screen and in your earballs on your audio podcast, Dan Keener, DK, DBC, Dr. Brent Kreider. Welcome to the show today, fellas. I know it's the offseason. Playoffs are going. We're not a part of it. But, man, the Lions stuff that's happening in the back rooms and all the stuff that's happening in Allen Park right now, pretty interesting, right?
Oh, yeah. Plenty to talk about. We are part of the playoffs. I'm out there talking smack with these Bears fans today because, they're just running their damn mouths out there. We've got I think it was Kyle Brandt that started it, all Ben Johnson does is beat the Packers. I'm like, you know who he didn't beat?
Well, that would be us.
Thanks for stopping. It touched a nerve with the Bears fans, man. They get a little pissy about it.
Well,
there's a lot of coping and seething going on and a lot of, enjoy your vacation in Cancun. I'm like, I'd love to be in Cancun, man. Ohio sucks right now. It's very dreary. So, whatever.
Might have been a little too soon for those in Chicago, right, Brent?
Yeah.
Well, they're still playing.
Well, the more important story for us is who's in Detroit today.
Oh, yeah.
So
Here's a live look, ladies and gentlemen, here of Mike McDaniel. No, they are letting him in. In fact, we have a live look at Allen Park. Here's Mike McDaniel. They're not allowing him out, ladies and gentlemen, of Allen Park. So
insane asylum.
Just go ahead and book it, Mike McDaniel. Can you imagine Mike McDaniel on the sideline with Dan Campbell? Yeah, that would just especially after some incredible wild play for a touchdown where Jahmyr Gibbs pitches it over to Amon-Ra St. Brown and he flips it through his legs and they score a touchdown. And then you just kind of go to the sidelines and there's MCDC and Mike McDaniels and then, I don't know what he does. Maybe he takes Mike McDaniels.
He might rip his shirt off like Ben Johnson does. I don't know.
Exactly. Or rip his pants like this photo. Man, incredible.
Like a Chippendale out there go, woo.
Forget the Packers, right?
Right. All right. Forget the Packers. I think that's what he said, right? Wanda
Something
Rich,
like
thanks
that.
for joining us as always. Folks, the chat is open. Wanda Rich has taken full advantage of the chat. We've got a lot to cover tonight regarding the David Montgomery situation. We're excited to see you as well, Wanda. Thanks, as always, for joining us. So let's get into it, guys, because I know there's a lot to talk about. Dan, outstanding work for putting together the written word, because we get all excited because we get on the screen with our microphones and our cameras and we do podcasting and all this stuff. But ladies and gentlemen, we do have a website. It's called thegraymains.com, and Dan put together an outstanding piece here on where we stand right now with David Montgomery. There's a lot of stuff going on out there in the interwebs, Dan, about David Montgomery. Is he staying? Is he going? So let's first kind of start and break down this piece. And Brent, jump in when you can fit in on this. I think it starts right here with Brad Holmes and the quote. And I think that's what a lot of people are sort of reading into with that quote. And, Dan, let's start with that quote. What did you hear in that answer from that press conference that the hot take crowd maybe missed?
It's an interesting response. I mean, it's typical Brad Holmes. He doesn't really say anything by saying a lot, but the things I picked up on here, it feels like this, and this obviously has been alluded to by Montgomery himself. He went out and had a couple cryptic posts on social media that people
Right.
were interpreting. And then Brad was asked at his end of season presser, basically, do you expect Dave Montgomery to be here next year? And he gave about a 1 minute answer on it, kind of rambling, but basically what I took from it is the Lions love Montgomery. They want him here. It does not appear, and again, I'm using this loosely because we don't have insight to what's going on, but it appears it was if there's a change and Montgomery is somehow either cut or traded or whichever, it seems to be initiated from Montgomery's side, and it appears to possibly be related to playing time, which I find bizarre. The guy's going to be making a lot of money on his current contract unless he's asked to renegotiate. But really, in reality, his numbers were down, but they weren't down that far.
Yeah.
But I think Brent brought up a great point a few shows ago. It wasn't his overall use. It was when he was being used. And last year he was the starter. He trotted out on the field. He ran the first series, and then Gibbs came in. Well, bro, you're 29 years old, 28 years old, almost 29. Gibbs is a dynamic running back. He can hit the home run every single time. He has surpassed you in the eyes of our running back coach and our offensive coordinator and our head coach. He has surpassed Montgomery as being the guy that needs to be on the field to give the Lions the best chance to win. And, the other thing is that we really didn't have the opportunity this year to use Montgomery as a closer. And I think he relishes that role. I think he relishes coming in and just pounding the rock into these guys in the fourth quarter and closing that game out. We just did not have enough opportunities this year to do that. We were playing from behind so much of the year.
Yeah.
And even with the struggles with the O-line, he was still doing okay, but when he struggled, Gibbs also struggled. We struggled mightily. So it didn't matter who was running the ball.
That's true. And so Brent, jump in here as someone who's watched Brad Holmes sort of operate this thing since 2021. Does this sound like a GM who's ready? He's made up his mind, or do you think it's he's doing his job, he's exploring all the options, maybe saying the right things, strategically. Before we get into some of the salary cap implications, if the Lions were to actually see Montgomery, flow into the ether here, what's your take here on the Holmes press conference and what he said about Monty?
When Dan first brought up, the quote from the press conference, the things that jumped out to me were, he may not be here next year. Excuse me. And he pointed out, he said, I hope that's not the case. I really want David Montgomery to be here. And he reemphasized again that he wants him, Dan and him want him there. So you guys all know this. I am a big fan of David Montgomery. I actually wish they had sort of kept the model that they had last year. And we all know Jahmyr Gibbs is a special talent. But if we had kept the same model, I don't think we would even be having this conversation. It was rare. If we went back and broke down all the film, it was rare that that Jahmyr Gibbs broke long runs in the first series of any game. We often struggled on first series, to find our footing. And so, the bottom line for me was I questioned Johnny Morton's use of him up until the point where Dan took over. And then I just think, at that point, you can't go back and say, okay, we're going to switch it up and have Monty start and Gibbs come off the bench. I mean, you can't take a superstar like Gibbs off the field once you make the decision to put him on the field in that role, especially for a young guy, right? Very proud. All these folks are proud. And I think that may be part of this here is Monty is got his ego a little bit hurt. His use wasn't what he thought it should be. And frankly, I tend to agree that he could have probably had a much bigger impact had they used him in the manner that they used him last year. And we were the third or fourth best offense in the history of the NFL. So there's all these different factors that go into it where Monty posted the picture ultimately of his shoulder pads, almost like a
Yeah.
farewell tour kind of picture is the way I took it. And then, who knows what's happening behind the scenes, because I don't think Monty, everything, I've watched a lot of videos about him, his personal life. He was at Iowa State a game a few weeks back when the Lions had a bye, and he's just a stand-up guy. Very, very respectable person, came from a rough upbringing, and he wants to bring, value back to young people and try to teach them and be a mentor and example of how to get out of a bad situation growing up. And I think he probably had a very personal conversation with Brad and Campbell, and that conversation is probably the reason why Holmes would even address it in his press conference.
Well, he was asked a question. I mean, he had to address it.
Right.
And let's be honest.
We could have said
it's a great story.
He's signed, right?
He has no control over the situation other than to sit out. If he wants to do a holdout, then that's fine. But he's just hurting himself. He's not hurting the Lions. All he's doing is hurting himself. And he doesn't get to dictate to where he goes. You are a 28-year-old running back. You are at the end of your career. You were set to make $6 million next year. Shut up, sit down, play your role. Guess what? This is the first year since you've been a Lion you played in all the games. Because you know why? You split carries with the younger back. He took the lead. He took the bulk of the carries this year. It's going to prolong his career. I mean, these are the things I outlined out there. He needs to sit back and think about this rationally. Don't let your ego make decisions for you that could hurt you long term. He's got a young family. He just had his first child with his girlfriend. Do you really want to be bouncing around to 2 or 3 different cities at the tail end of your career because you got upset because you weren't getting the amount of carries that you thought you should, or maybe you thought you should be starting? I mean, again, this is all, we don't know. And I'm not going to
there's a lot of speculation. Know. Right.
It's all speculation.
Exactly.
But where there's smoke, there's fire. And the bottom line is, it is what it is. You're not going to get hardly anything in return for this guy. Nobody wants to take on somebody that's got a $6 million salary. It's not guaranteed, but $1.5 million is going to be guaranteed on March 13th or 18th or something like that. He's been productive, but again, you're at the end of your career, man. Running backs basically don't last after they're 29, and he's got one more year with the Lions. From the Lions standpoint, this year makes sense to pay him his $6 million, keep going with him, use him. He's gone after next year. They're not going to pay him $8 million, right? That's the same with anybody if he gets traded.
Yeah. What other things could happen, right? The Lions could be asking him to take a pay cut. And so we're just talking through this from the perspective that these are the things that we know happen in this scenario where a running back gets a little bit long in the tooth. Either the player's unhappy with his playing time, or the team wants him to take a pay cut because he's going to have less carries. His performance, if you look at his stats are 4.5 yards a carry. In last season, he had 4.2 yards.
His numbers, great point here. Let me push pause, Brent, and go back to you on this. It's not like you're looking at what he's doing and seeing a production and saying he's washed. He's not. He can play. Yes, he's approaching the tail end of his career. If you're going to put a number on it, who knows? Barring injury, 2, 3 good seasons, decent seasons, maybe, right? And so, back to you, Brent. I mean, I just don't think when you look at him, it's not like we look at him and go, "Oh, the dude is not worth this amount of money." If he could certainly come back and be capable of being able to play better, given the right scheme, given the right situations, like Dan had talked about. I think there was a lot of situations in the line where we're playing from behind, and we're playing from behind. It's not David Montgomery in the backfield, unfortunately, in a lot of these games.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at his long runs, right? He since he's come to the Lions, he had 3 seasons of his average being more than he ever had with the Bears, all 3 seasons. And so the guy is not a guy that can't break a 70-yard run like he did against the Chargers last year. He has the ability to go the distance. There were some great blocks on that run, as we all remember. JMO was out leading the charge, and so I think he's still a very productive running back. Running backs, the other factor that I wanted to bring up was running backs have been devalued. over the past few years. And so, your commitment to spend what they're going to spend on Gibbs, and when he comes eligible here for a contract extension, is going to be in the top tier of running backs, I believe. Because frankly, why not wait till you're a free agent if you don't get an offer from the Lions that's fair market value? And so, you got to balance that salary cap that Disner does a great job of doing for the Lions. And so, at some point you have to say, we can't spend this much on the running back position because of that devaluation over time, et cetera. So that, the guy is a really good football player. He's a fantastic teammate. He's loved by his players. Him and Gibbs are very close friends, like brothers. They've described it.
Yeah.
And so, there's nothing here more than just, this is part of business. This is absolute
business.
just a part of
Keyword
business.
right there. It's a business.
Yep.
And so, any more about this? There's no hot takes here, as you guys have said. We debate this from all angles that we from our experiences tells us that are probably happening in the back room. And look, I respect the heck out of the way that the Lions are managing this, because we know when the last person asked for a trade, they traded him. They're probably gonna treat everybody that way. If you don't want to be here in Detroit, our culture is this is our family. This is our organization. Here's how we're gonna run things, and it's about the team. And I don't think he's going to cause problems one way or the other. Even if he's asked to take a salary cut, just like Anzalone. Anzalone still said, "I want to be here."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And congratulations, by the way, to Anzalone and his wife. They had their third child today, so throw that out there.
Nice.
Bring in lots of more baby Anzalones to the world.
And by the way, Chris, I love Dan's shirt. Do we want to talk a little bit about materials that are available?
And
we got some merch
wearing
happening here. Show it off there. Like
I know Wanda would buy one.
There we go. Nice.
Yeah. I got mine on too, guys, just so everybody can see it.
Got the website on the back.
Yeah.
Excellent. Good looking men with that merch. Yeah, I think this is great perspective, guys. And so for those of you who are watching, thank you for watching. Hit subscribe, like all of the stuff that's in front of you here on video. And if you're listening on the audio podcast, please follow us in your audio podcast player. Leave us a review, all that happy stuff. But I think this is the kind of intel that we want to talk about, because I think a casual fan who doesn't understand, Dan, the salary cap implications of this, they would go, oh, come on, just let's keep Sonic and Knuckles together. That's no big deal. Or they're like, screw this guy. He's taking pictures of his locker. He's pouting, which may or may not be the case. All this kind of stuff sort of plays into like what Brad Holmes is looking at is, of course, he even said it in the press conference. We love the player. We love what he can do. We want him here. But this is a business. And so the segue here is, let's get into the numbers that I think a lot of people are ignoring. So, Dan, walk us through these actual cap hit. If the Lions cut or trade Montgomery pre-June 1st, and, I know March is another date that was in your article. So let's break that down from a salary cap perspective.
Yeah, sure thing. So here's the deal. If the Lions decide to move on from Montgomery, it's not, by any means, it's not going to be a killer to the cap by any means, right? I think his cap hit this year is a little shy of $8.4 million. That includes his signing bonus proration, but the big number is his base salary and his bonus that are out there. So if the Lions cut him or trade him before June 1st, which, logically, if you're trying to take care of a kid and get him somewhere where he wants to be, you're going to want to do it before training camp. So you're going to want to do it June 1st, probably. There is a date, like I said, there's a March, I believe, 18th date where he's got guarantee for injury that changes to guarantee period. So I think that's going to be, I wouldn't say that's a hard date, but that's just a date to keep an eye on. But the bottom line is the Lions cut him. They're going to get 4.8 million, 4.9 million in dead cap. That's going to go against next year's cap. But because of his base salary that's out there, they'll be able to recoup some of that because they won't be paying him that base salary. So essentially, the 5.5 million in base salary plus the $510,000 in per game bonuses, that doesn't hit. So he ends up saving $3.5 million. So everybody's like, okay, cool. It's going to cost us 4.8, but we're going to save $3.5 million against our cap because we were going to spend that money. Well, not really. You're actually losing not only the $4.8 million against your cap, but you're losing the player that money was allocated for. He won't be there to produce for you.
Right.
So realistically, if we move on for David Montgomery before June 1st, it will end up being a $1.35 million net cap savings. So again, the player's not here. So if you think logically, that's the amount of cash on hand to net zero out this transaction to find his replacement.
1.3 million is what
Yes.
you're saying for a guy to replace him.
Short of a rookie like fourth rounder that just explodes, you are not going to find a running back.
There it is.
For $1.4 million.
There it is. I mean,
to come in and produce that
Use the
David
word
Montgomery
veteran.
gives us.
You just use the word veteran, right?
I mean, a veteran minimum salary is like $1.2 million, I think, or 1.1.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
But what are you getting for that? You're getting a guy that either has been a never have been, or he's a has been, right? I mean, there's some decent free agents. There's a handful. I kind of threw some criteria out there if you're looking for a replacement in the veteran unrestricted free agent market. If they want to go the same route they went with Monty, they're going to have to find somebody that's 25 or 26 right now. That's, probably played 30 to 40% of his team's offensive snaps, but he's got to have power back traits. That's what we're losing. We're losing a guy who's power back, has some wiggle room, but he's a 5-tool player. He can run the ball well. He can catch the ball well. He's a willing blocker and a really good blocker, and he's got vision and wiggle. And to find that kind of player for that kind of money, you're not going to happen. You're going to have a net negative somewhere in this exchange. You're either going to have to burn a bunch of extra salary cap to replace him, or you're going to have to burn a draft pick to replace him. We have other needs, I mean,
100%.
We have needs. Yeah. I mean, this is like literally Kevin Costner in draft day.
It's
right?
called
He's
offensive
like,
line.
I have other needs.
Right. It's like the running back isn't going anywhere unless we address the offensive line,
It's like,
right?
dude, I got 2 linebackers under contract next year. My other edge outside frickin' Hayden Hutchinson is a 6th round draft pick that was on practice squad and injured reserve most of the year. We need other depth. Both our starting safeties, we don't know if they're going to play to win next year, if at all. So there's a lot of issues, and having to replace a running back that is a known commodity, that is by all accounts a great player, a great teammate, a good producer, a guy that this is his perfect scenario, even if he doesn't realize it yet. That's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
Well, let me just give you a few names. You gave us a number.
Let's
right?
throw out some names.
And a lot of these are first contract players. Cam Scadaboo, 1.2 million. Bucky Irving, 1.2 million. Trevor Etienne, 1.2 million. Woody Marks, 1.2 million.
Those are draft picks.
I know. I'm just giving you what I think some people would alternatively say is, do you draft somebody? Chase Brown is 1.2 million, et cetera, right? And I did a little bit of analysis, and I see Chris popped it up there, but these are just some names that were 4th round to 7th round draft picks over the last 5 or 6 years. And so, if things go south with the Lions, it at this point, I would argue it's 50-50 whether he's with the Lions next year or not. I think, Dan, you're probably leaning more towards a higher percentage that he is retained. And you made a very pointed argument as to why that would be the case. And I can't really disagree with you. So if he stays, no harm, no foul. The numbers are what they are. We know what that is. But if things do go south, just remember there are a lot of players that are going to be in this draft that could potentially be a 4th to 7th round pick that we could, it takes Holmes to do his job. His scouts have got to find those running backs that could
He already
step in.
drafted a 4th round running back though 2
Yeah,
years
that didn't
ago.
work out. See, Baki was a safety. I mean, look,
I'm just saying that he's already thrown assets at it, So
well, we saw
him and
our
Sailors
owner,
are our backups. They cut Craig Reynolds for the 2 youngsters. So what does that tell you?
We saw our owner's message where we are willing to look at every avenue for improving how we do business. The season ticket holders all got this message from the front office, and you posted it. So but
guys, here's the thing that I look at, but is this, Brent, salient points here in terms of could the Lions be looking at somebody in the 4th, 5th round that's a running back if there's somebody available, if they're knowing Holmes, if he's got somebody in mind, he's probably going to go up higher than that to get that player that he's been known to do that. But let's be honest, right? I think we feel like this team, healthy, going into next year, has potential to go far into the playoffs and compete for a Super Bowl. This is what we believe. There was obviously we missed the playoffs this year. There was a number of factors around that, but when you hear 1.3 million net savings, what Dan's talking about, does that number move the needle for a team trying to compete for a Super Bowl?
No, Chris, we are 100% better team with him on the roster. There is no equivocation. I'm a big fan of Monty's, Demo. People call him different things, but I am absolutely of the opinion that we should. Thanks, Zach. It's not a problem area. We've got problem areas, offensive line. We've got 2 linebackers, I think, signed on the roster. We need to shore up edge. We've got 2 safeties that were, best safety tandem in the NFL. We're down both of them. Hey Chase, we have a bunch of issues here, right?
Yeah.
And
why create a new hole?
It's not running back. So I would tell Holmes, as to Dan's point, keep the guy happy. If you've asked him to take a pay cut, be willing to acquiesce a little bit because that money's not gonna mean a whole lot if you create another problem for yourself.
And I'll be honest with you, the money's not even really an issue if you think about it, because they still have. This is like the quarterback Super Bowl teams that have a quarterback in a rookie contract, right? You have Montgomery, who's making starter money. And you've got Gibbs, who's still on a rookie deal, who won't even be eligible for the 5th-year option until next offseason. So to me, this is a moot point. Just pay the guy. He stayed healthy this year. It's the first time he stayed healthy in his entire career other than his rookie year, where he's played every game. And frankly, burning draft capital doesn't make sense. And then if you go look at the free agent market, there's literally only 3 guys that are even remotely close, maybe 4, that you could go get, but you're going to pay them the same amount you're paying him already. And those are guys like Javonte Williams, who the Cowboys absolutely want to keep him. He's their lead back. Breece Hall with the Jets. I don't think Glenn wants to give him up. He doesn't have any other playmakers besides him and Wilson.
Yeah.
So, and then the last guy is a guy that most Michiganders are familiar with. That's Kenneth Walker up in Seattle. Outside of that, you're getting into dudes that are in their 30s or guys that are kind of like looking for big bucks, or, guys like Najee Harris, J.K. Dobbins, Rico Dwaddle, Travis Etienne. These are guys that are over the age of 28, 27, 28, where, you might be able to do them as a gap, but, Kenneth Gainwell, the Steelers, is another one. I like that kid, But do they fit the profile? Do they give us what Monty gives us? We got to get a running back because, let's be honest, we have been blessed that Gibbs has not missed a ton of games his first 2 years.
Right.
And the more he plays as the starting running back, the more chance there's going to be that he's going to missing some time or missing games. You got to have a competent running back. You cannot use a rookie in there that is not proven.
Right.
You have to have, Craig Reynolds saved our ass several times over the last 4 years by coming in spot duty and providing solid veteran play.
Yeah.
And he was nowhere near the type of player that David Montgomery was. Even Williams a few years ago, Montgomery outpaced Williams, and we all thought Williams was fantastic. He scored 20 touchdowns or some crazy 18 that one year.
This is a
and then
great
he flopped
segue
when he left.
Yeah, this is a great segue because Helpful Chase brings this in, and he says a lot of guys we bring in play better in our system and gain more market value. You look at Jamal Williams, and it was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how great Jamal Williams is. He had 18, 20 touchdowns, whatever he had, and all of a sudden he was gone, and we thought, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? How are we going to replace all of these touchdowns that Jamal Williams had? And then he just disappeared into the New Orleans Saints ether.
It's the joys of being a winning football program, right? Remember what was his name? Brown, the Cowboys cornerback, who intercepted the ball in the Super Bowl and got that huge contract and was a huge bust. I mean, you see this successful team, and what a blessing, right? We have a successful football team who are losing coaches, who are losing players to bigger contracts in other organizations. But this Chris, to me, brings up a more interesting discussion around the Lions' commitment to keep their own. Right? There's been these debates about maybe spending a premium to keep your own players over the past season and a half, where Holmes has made it clear that his and Dan's preference is to sign their players, re-sign their players to extensions, and keep their homegrown talent. Love the model. I frankly love the model, but there are going to be times where exceptions have to be made. And when you get into this salary cap situation that we're entering into now, where we have roughly $34 million because we can roll this year's money forward to next season, and I added up this year's what's left and next year's amount, $34 million plus, as Dan likes to point out, we have the ability to restructure some huge contracts for Goff and Panay and et cetera. So we could end up with a lot of salary cap space. So, we're sitting here talking about, 1.6 million, 1.3 million, and we have the ability to make some strategic moves as an organization to free up a lot of salary cap space. We have a need, at tackle. We have potentially I think we need to address tackle, even if our left tackle doesn't retire.
That's got to be a high draft pick.
High draft
first
pick.
Or second. Yep. Without a doubt.
Absolutely. Yep. And so then you start to break this down and you look at where are our needs and where do we need to be addressing it. You keep Monty, you keep Gibbs, you re-sign your players that you drafted and developed, Laporta, Gibbs, Campbell, of course. You guys know I'm a big fan of Campbell's, Branch, and you start to trim the fat, right? If Kirby's career is really over, you got to figure out a way to move him on down the road, give him a couple $1 million or whatever it takes to restructure, and then he retires to reduce the amount of cap. And then I think we have a player still arbitration, Dan, the guy that
the cornerback that went to the Steelers after he decided to run for the cops for 5 days. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen there. I suspect we're just going to get screwed because the NFL, they pretty much hate the Lions. So, what do you want from us? We did the right thing, and we got rid of a guy who was running from the freaking cops. Right. Who did he contact while he was running from? He contacted Mike Tomlin while he was away, not his current staff. Oh. And then all of a sudden, he magically signed with the Steelers after we cut him. Well, to me, that's tampering, number one. Number two, you know what? We were in our contract, it is very clearly defined, that would qualify as being a breach of contract. Right. Why the NFL hasn't ruled on that yet, I don't know. That's just common sense to me. They always said 6.8.
Wow, yeah, that's a little side thing that I didn't think we would ever get into, was Cam Sutton and Mike Tomlin.
Well, Dan makes a good point about him calling the coach. But I mean,
Sure.
in that situation, the guy's on
It
the
is
run.
what
The
it
coach,
is.
the
That's
coach
his
takes the call.
mentor.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I'm not going to argue that point. But I will say that there's potentially $6 or so million more dollars that was tied up in Cam Sutton. So anyway, the point being, if the decision is to move on from Monty, we've got two fourth rounders, two sixth rounders. And frankly, I'm a big fan because I think that the talent level between like pick 12 and pick 45 and 50 is roughly the same. And so I would argue this is a great year for the Lions to trade back. And what we're gonna, over the next coming weeks, I don't mean to take us off track there, but part of the strategy needs to be, in my mind, pile up those second round picks and third round picks, trade back a couple times, get a few picks, and then you can use those fourth and fifth and sixth rounders for either trading up and adding those into the when you get to the point where you've got to get your guy like Holmes is right to do, and then pick up a developmental quarterback later.
Good point on that too, Brent. I mean, let's just be honest. Montgomery's not going to bring anything in a trade, that people are clamoring for. Or they're like, oh, we'll get a second round for. Oh, that's ridiculous. You're going to get freaking a low fourth if you're lucky and a case of Verner's. I mean, you are simply not going to get.
They go.
A guy that's got a $6 million salary this year. You're not going to get anything higher than a fourth for him.
Yeah.
Especially because he's already let it be known to everybody that he wants out, killing the Lions' chances of getting maximum value for him because they know that the Lions are going to try and do right by this guy, if that's the case, and send him somewhere. And if he further says, well, I only want to go to the Bengals because he's a Cincinnati native. Let's say he just wants to go to the Bengals. Well, then that just further deteriorates any leverage the Lions have for a trade. So this is where I look into I kind of outlined all this in there. This is where Montgomery, I think, he did himself and the Lions a little bit dirty by kind of airing his dirty laundry, even subtly. I know
Right.
he's a great guy, but you know what? At some point, it is still a business. You're hindering the Lions' ability, not helping them to get to where everybody wants to be. And if you want to go somewhere else just to get more use, but you don't care about getting a championship, I mean, there's only about 6 or 7 teams you could go to that's going to be in a better position than the Lions at potentially getting to
the
playoffs and the Super Bowl. I mean, obviously we had a lot of issues with injuries. We screwed up our OC hire, which could be part of it. What I'm hoping to have happen here is, and I kind of outlined this in my article, that I hope cooler heads prevail. He sits down, talks with Campbell, talks with whoever the new OC is, talks with Brad, and they get it figured out. And, they don't have to make him guarantees, but they can just say, and Brad even said it, this wasn't intended for him to have less carries than he did last year. It's just, that's the way it ended up working out. Clearly they're aware of it now that he's unhappy about it, but at some point, I think the Lions just need to do everything they can to keep him in the fold this year. And then after the end of the season, and this is going to be the same scenario with him if he's traded. And this is where I think he's a little short-sighted. I mentioned about his young family bouncing around. Bro, you're either going to get told to renegotiate or get cut, whoever trades for you. They're not going to pay him that amount of money as a 29-year-old running back next year unless he goes out and becomes Saquon Barkley, from 2 years ago when he was ripping off
$6 million for a 29-year-old is that's.
I mean, that's
well, if he wants to go to Cincinnati, 3 things. One is I'll take Chase Brown. I'll chase Chase Brown back for him, and we'll call we'll call it a done deal.
Yeah.
Right. So the second point is that, look, what makes him any different than Anzalone? Anzalone did the same thing last year by actually he ended up going to the media.
Well, Anzalone was holding out for more money. He wasn't crying about his playing time and wanting to be sent out of town to somewhere else. I don't think
anybody would ever characterize it as crying about playing time, Dan. I think that's
what else is there? He's getting paid more than a running back in his position as a number 2 running back in the NFL. What are you complaining about? They are not going to pay a 28-year-old running back more money than he's already got in the books for.
Yeah, he has not got a lot of tread off his tire. He's not your normal 28-year-old running back. And 28 is not that old. 30 is the cliff usually for running backs. So, 30, 31, he's not had tons of carries like a lot of the running backs that get to this point. He's still incredibly productive.
He's in a perfect situation. Why do you want to muck that up by going somewhere else?
He wants to make it clear that he wants more touches. And come on. He's a competitor. Would we want him? Would we want him if he's not out there saying, I can contribute to this team more?
I think everybody wants him to get more touches. The game situation dictated it, as well as the offensive coordinator. You guys laid that out. And I think that's just a matter of sitting down and having conversation with that player.
All those stats I put up, Chris, just look at this really fast. I know we got to get to another segment in a few minutes, but the key stat here for me is the offensive snap percentage. It's the fourth column from the left. He played 37.1% of the offensive snaps this year. Okay. Which means he didn't always get the ball, but he was on the field 3% more of the snaps this year than he was last year.
And he only had 28 less carries, right?
And he only had 28 less carries. Now, he missed 3 games last year, but that percentage is based, I believe, off of the games that you are actually in, not the entirety of the season.
Right.
And look at, he had 60 less yards.
Yeah.
He had 0.3 more yards per carry. Now his touchdowns were down by 4 for rushing, but his receiving was way down this year. I'm looking at this going, that's like one game's worth of like 22 snaps. That's really, it's just, it feels like it boils down to maybe the starting thing, and you hammered that home, Brett, starting the game, softening him up on that first drive. It almost feels like he doesn't like the fact that, maybe they promised him when they brought him in that he would be the lead back through his career here. And then Gibbs is just, all of a sudden we draft Gibbs and he's no longer the lead back because Gibbs is simply, taking it from him. Maybe that's it. I don't know. David, if you're listening, I hope you stay, buddy. We love you here.
Yes.
We think you would be great here. I feel it's a mistake try and force your way to go somewhere else if that's the case, and maybe it's not. Maybe the Lions being jackasses and trying to make you take a $4 million pay cut. I don't know. If that's the case, then Godspeed, son. I hear you, and I agree with you. But
respect.
At some point, though, you have to look at what is best for me. You nailed it on the head, Brent. He does not have a lot of tread on his tires, and he has never been a full-time lead back in the NFL. And if you go somewhere where they try to make you that, you might end up playing only 7 games because your body can't handle that, because you're not used to doing 17 games worth of damage to your body in 7, as the lead back over 17 games, we don't know, but the older you get, the harder it is to maintain yourself, and get yourself ready to be on the field. So,
guys, this has been outstanding.
Keep going with it.
Outstanding breakdown. Dan, great article. You've convinced me for sure that the Lions should do everything they can to keep Monty, Demo, whatever you call him, David Montgomery in-house for another year. Keep him happy, but he's got to buy into the offense and understand, he's, next season he's going to be 29, and you've got Jahmyr Gibbs in there as well. Absolutely convincing. Great argument. I wanted to touch base because there's a number of folks in the chat. Everybody's wanting to talk offensive coordinator tonight, and we went and focused on David Montgomery, and there's a lot of offensive coordinator stuff happening out there. Donkey Kong 43, thanks for joining again tonight. Sheila put Holmes on the hot seat, I guess, with Sheila's note to season ticket holders. And Donkey
Kong no
says,
joke, right? She's no joke, man.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
love. Yep.
McDaniels or bust, says Donkey Kong 43. And then Detroit fan man 9899, give me big old Kafka. Okay, we've got a vote for Kafka in the chat. And Kafka is coming in for an interview as
hopefully
announced.
He's coming in.
Yeah, so this is the other thing I think we're gonna touch base before we roll into this into the new segment, is that the Lions are not talking about everybody they're talking to. So I think that's the other thing that everybody's got to realize. Like they put it out that they're talking to McDaniels, and just so that everybody is aware, we did post a live photo of Mike McDaniels not being able to leave from Allen Park tonight. So that may be Donkey Kong, Detroit fan. I mean, this may be a factor in how you feel about the offensive coordinator situation. But folks, we appreciate you joining. We're going to roll into our new segment, ladies and gentlemen. And this is something that's going to be fun for us, and we're going to be doing this every week, at least in the off season, and at least as long as we have players to do this. So here we go. We're going to roll into it right now. All right, this is the recurring segment we're calling the Gray Mains Hall of the Underrated, where we're going to celebrate Lions legends who don't get the recognition they deserve. And our first inductee is a name that should be mentioned alongside many other Lions players when we talk about Lions greatness. Ladies and gentlemen,
Bob Gagliano. Oh, my bad. He's coming up on the never part of the list.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know this name, it is the name who it caused much excitement for us on many a Sunday. This is the one and the only Mel Gray. Mel Gray was an amazing specialist for the Detroit Lions from 1989 through 1994. He was a four-time Pro Bowler from 88, 89, 90, and 91. Three-time first-team All-Pro. Led the NFL in punt return average 4 times, 88, 89, 90, and 91. If you recognize those years, yeah, there was a running back that played during those years. I think his name rhymes with Sari Banders. His career averages 11.9 yards per punt return, 20.3 yards per kick return, had 27 total return touchdowns in his career, which includes, here's a little fun fact, he played in the USFL before the NFL. So that includes the USFL, played, as I mentioned, during the Barry Sanders era, but was a weapon in his own right. One of the most electrifying returners in NFL history. Dan, Brent, you both watched Mel Gray terrorize special teams coordinators for nearly a decade. Let's give this man his flowers. Dan, let's start with you. When you think back to the Mel Gray area, what's the first image or play that comes to mind?
Well, first of all, before we get into Mel, let's just mention how we got here, right? So we sat down and said, hey, why don't we put together a list of our top, 10, 15 guys that we feel are just not, they were great to us, but maybe are not household names to everybody else. And, we landed on Mel as our first one because he was one of, I think, 3 consensus amongst the 4 of us on our lists. And he just stood out, for me, and I'll make it brief. For me, for Mel Gray, anytime that guy had a ball coming in his direction, whether it was a kick return or a punt return, you held your breath.
Yeah.
You just didn't know.
Yeah.
He had 9 career return touchdowns. This was before the Brian Mitchells and who was the guy from the Bears that just
Devin
tore it up? Hester. You're talking the late 80s, early 90s, right? I mean, this guy, he was a weapon for the Lions. You had Barry Sanders on that team. You had, Mitchell throwing it to Herman Moore and Perryman and, whoever else.
Johnny Morton.
David Hands of Sloan was out there, Hands of Stone, excuse me. I'm sure there was some overlap somewhere in there. But Mel Gray was a reason that you didn't just turn your head or go to take a leak or try and grab a soda, during a punt or a kick return, because he could take it to the house every single time. He was
100%.
literally the Lions version of Billy White Shoes Johnson. He was
Mm.
similar in size and stature. He
Yeah.
was electrifying. He could make cuts. You know, he was like Baby Barry out there.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, interesting factoid, Dan. If you remember when I took Grant to the camp in Ohio, there,
Yeah.
I have a picture of me and Billy White Shoes Johnson together. Billy White Shoes Johnson, before Mel Gray, was my favorite return guy ever. He was just so awesome to watch. But the thing about Mel Gray that really stood out to me, and my favorite, there's 6 or 7 of his returns that are my favorites. But he ran reckless. I mean, this guy, he ran straight up. He had this awesome stride about him, and so watching him run was amazing in those days. And he could change a game. You know, we always talk about special teams and the impact. There's 3 parts to football: offense, defense, and people. It's like John Harbaugh, who really plays up that, that special teams part to the game. Mel Gray was a game changer for the Detroit Lions for many years. And if we could put the Minnesota highlights up there, for those of you that didn't have the pleasure of seeing him run, the guy just caught the ball and he was off. I mean, he hit seams recklessly, ferociously, and he got hit there were some big hits on him, coming
He's a small
through
player,
there,
166
because he was a small
pounds.
guy.
Yeah, very small.
Yep.
By today's standards, you're not gonna make it 166 pounds, guys. He was different, right? And there's just something about players like him. You mentioned Devin Hester. I'm glad you did. Devin Hester, obviously the greatest returner of all time. So full respect.
What? I thought it was Mel Gray.
Well, no. No, we're not doing the Bears
outside of
Hall of
tonight,
the Underrated.
Normally.
But when you watch Jahmyr Gibbs as an example, when you watch him run and move, there's something different, right? They just don't run and move like other people. And Mel Gray was the example of that. And I loved, Dan, how you said this. You didn't go up and take a leak or go grab a Budweiser from the refrigerator like you would do so many times.
A pop.
A Faygo. Because you knew that team was kicking off to Mel Gray, and you had a chance.
Must-see TV.
That's right. Must-see TV. And during that point in time, there was a lot of seasons where these Lions, all you had was Barry Sanders and Mel Gray. And, that was the electrifying component of that. Do you guys have any specific memories from Mel Gray that you'd want to share, Dan?
I mean, I've seen, there's highlights the Lions put on their website for his birthday. I think earlier this year, they put out a highlight video showing his returns. They weren't all his touchdowns, but they were, just his electrifying returns. He had a lot that didn't go to the house that still went like 40, 50, 60 yards. I mean, everybody this last year, they're used to watching Jacob Sailors run 25 yards and pile into the biggest pile of bodies he can find and fall down. That's not what this guy did. To Brent's point, he was like winding his way through a forest. He just whipped through there and just didn't hit anything, and it was fantastic. But, I have lots of good memories of him, but I want to say, and I'm not trying to take thunder away from Mel Gray, but I do want to say one of the reasons Mel Gray had his success, and if you look at his years where he had his most touchdowns and he got his awards, his accolades for, AP and for All Pro and everything, there was a guy that was running the Lions special teams by the name of Frank Gantz Sr. And Frank Gantz was a freaking magician. He was there for 4 of Mel Gray's 5 years. I just remember him out there starting, I'd see clips of it where he would go out and he had the only thing I could explain it is he had a lavalier microphone and basically a microphone fanny pack on his back that was speakers. And he would start every practice during those years with special teams practice. That's how they started practice. And he had that enormous mic out there running around. And, he helped make he helped. I don't say made Mel Gray, because he didn't make Mel Gray. He helped turn Mel Gray loose and become the beast that you can see on the screen right now. How, to Brent's point, just running recklessly. They didn't have these lame ass rules for kickoffs now, trying to prevent, the head injuries. They just cut him loose, and he
was
took full
fearless
advantage
too.
of it.
These highlights, when you watch
He
Mel,
was.
he was fearless.
167 pounds. This is a
Taking the
103-yard touchdown.
taking the kick deep into the end zone and just like delivering it and fearlessly coming right through, carving the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, what I loved was the runs against Green Bay, Minnesota, and Chicago. A lot of those long runs that are on his highlight reel are against division rivals, which is where you got to win those games, right? And so seeing him return against Chicago, the one against Minnesota is probably my favorite run. So a great guy to start the list with. And Dan talked a little bit about how we got here. And it's a very small select group of players that we put into this category of the Hall of the Underrated. And I think the folks that are out there are going to really appreciate the next couple of folks, because we did this. We intentionally said, to Dan's point, we said, send your list in, and nobody's going to look at the list until we consolidate them. So it was purely us.
And then we overthunk it like we typically do everything, right?
Well, the beauty is those top four, I think people are genuinely, especially, the gray mains like us, are going to appreciate the list that we put together and look forward to this segment. I think it was a brilliant idea, Chris. If it was you, I think it was you that.
And I think the younger viewers and listeners, I think there's, as much as we love this team, the current team, right? All of the players that we can name, whether it's Laporta, or even if you go back just a little bit and you can remember the time when, Reggie Bush was, became the first 1,000-yard rusher in X amount of years, or Ndamukong Suh, or those kinds of things. Like maybe that area. If you just go back a little bit, and you look and you kind of study the history of the Detroit Lions, even if it's in the 80s, right? Outside of Barry Sanders, right? And no question, there's nobody that loves Barry Sanders more than the three guys you see on your screen or hear in your earballs right now on audio podcasts. But there are so many players that are underrated, in our opinion, that we really wanted to shine a light on. And Mel Gray just was on everyone's list of a player that is like, all four of us were like, this guy no one appreciates as much as they should. And he's not even in the one pride, sort of what they call their, typically what a team will have their ring of honor or whatever. He's not even in that, which is crazy. Right. And I don't know. I mean, maybe guys, when you look at his, he was only with the Lions for 5 seasons, right? He bounced around a little bit beforehand and afterwards, right? He was on, Cardinals, Saints. He was on a USFL team. There was a lot of stuff that was going on, and he was a specialist, right? I think he caught some passes as a wide receiver just because they're putting him in for some gadget plays or something like that. But I mean, he was like, we're putting him in, so we're devoting an entire roster space just for a guy who's returning punts and kicks, right? And it was for 5 years, but it was enough for us to say this guy was electrifying. I love, Dan, the picture that you painted was, You're not walking away from the television because 23 is going to get the ball kicked to him. And if that team is stupid enough to kick to him, I'm going to be stupid enough to sit here and watch it. And that was a lot of fun. I got to believe, guys, when we look back at the early 90s when Mel Gray played, and of course Barry Sanders played at that point in time, when you look at Monday Night Football or any sort of national television, the team didn't warrant being on Monday Night Football because they weren't making the playoffs. They probably weren't even a 500 team in some of those cases. They made the playoffs in a couple of those seasons, but they made it because they had exciting players, and Mel Gray was one of them.
Yep.
Mel Gray was my favorite kick returner in the history of the NFL. Devin Hester aside, just because of the way he ran, and he was a Lion. He was our guy. And interesting, when I read an article that where he was talking about, he said those 6 years in Detroit defined my career. Yes, I played for other teams. He loved Joe Marciano. You guys may remember that name, the special teams coordinator for the Saints when he was there. But he said those years were special for me. He said when I would come back to the sideline after having a big return, the whole team was pumped. And the fans were going crazy. He was revered by the Detroit Lions fans.
Yeah.
And ultimately, he really had a big impact in helping the Lions to win more games than they probably should have won, given our lack of success during some of that time frame. Him and Barry, if it weren't for those two during those 89 to 95 years, it would have been very scarce for the Lions to get into the end zone, unfortunately.
One quick last thought on this. He, back then information was as readily available as it is now. You can see anybody, everybody on every team. You only saw what was on broadcast TV and who your team was playing, and you only likely saw the opposing team maybe twice a year, right? But when you watched him play and you watched him return kicks, you didn't know what else was going on in the league. But what you did know is that this kid was special, because much like the other players that we've been blessed with, Barry, Billy Sims, all these guys, right? Mel Gray was special when he returned the ball, because he wasn't just some stiff out there catching it, or, getting to the 18-yard line if he returned it from the end zone. He had that threat ability every single time he touched the ball. And we knew that, even though we didn't know who else was going on in the league other than, the NFC. What the hell were we back then? The Central, I guess.
Central,
Central,
with the Bucks.
With the Bucks.
The creamsicles.
So that was the thing about him, is you just knew he had that aura about him. This was a special player, and we were lucky to have him on the Lions, and we didn't always have that. We were up and down back in the 80s, and having him consistently be, during his time here, consistently be a threat and be a weapon for us was a benefit. It was nice to have.
Awesome, guys. I love this segment.
Do you guys know how many games we played on Monday Night Football between 1989 and 1995?
Oh, probably zero.
No, probably 3.
5.
Okay.
5.
Those in the years when the bad years of our record after coming off of a good year.
Wasn't one of those the New England game where Barry turned that guy around 3 times before he went in? That I remember.
No, that wasn't. That was like 97, I think. But we beat the Raiders, lost to the 49ers, beat the Cowboys, where Barry and Emmett matched up, beat the Giants 28-25, and lost to the Bears 27-7. Those years were very bleak, and usually if we won 2 games, we beat the Bucks twice.
Right. Yeah. There wasn't a ton
of
cheer
Bucks
for
until we became the Bucks.
Yeah. Thank God for the Bucks. Anyway.
Guys, I love this segment. I particularly loved the passion that I thought each one of us brought to this, because like it when we remember those times, right? We were a lot younger then. For sure. But we were young in our fandom as well of this Lions team. So this is fun. This is a great segment. And for those who are watching and listening, if you have a suggestion for the Gray Main's Hall of the Underrated, send it to us. Pop it in the we're giving all of our social media, our email, all of this stuff, all in the audio podcast, here on the video podcast. Let us know who you think should be in the Gray Main's Hall of the Underrated, and we may highlight your suggestion here on the show. So there you go, guys. Mel Gray, our first inductee into the Gray Main's Hall of the Underrated. We'll be back with more legends who deserve their due. Thanks for also rolling with us tonight with the Montgomery breakdown. Fantastic breakdown, guys, and as well. Dan, Brent, great stuff as always. Lions fans, let's keep the conversation going in the comments. The 2-fan coming in right here before we end the show. We appreciate you. Go with the French go, Lions.
Détroit. Détroit, right?
Détroit, that's right. Détroit, wah, wah. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you next time on Lions Gray Mans. And as always, we love to say, go Lions.
Go Lions.
Bust it outside left. Jameer down to the 10. Jameer to the 5. Jameer to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions.
Hand off Berry. Surge to the left side. Breaks the tackle. And he will take it in. Touchdown.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions. That's what I'm talking about. It is caught.